There is a photograph of George Orwell taken in 1946, 2 years before he began the book that would become his name. He sits at a desk on the Isle of Jura, a remote Hebridean rock off the coast of Scotland, soaked in rain and silence. He is 43. He looks 60. His lungs are being eaten alive by tuberculosis. His wife, Eileen, is dead. He has a cough that cracks his ribs. And yet he is writing. He is writing *1984 star. In that photograph, you can see it, the hollow cheek, the burning eye, the thin wrist supporting a heavy pen. This is what it looks like when a man is being consumed by his subject. Let me take you back further. To 1936. The Spanish Civil War. Orwell went to fight fascism, a tall, gaunt Englishman with a rifle and an unfashionable conviction that ordinary people deserved better. He joined the POUM, a militia of anti-Stalinist Marxists. He took a bullet through the throat, nearly died, and then watched as the Stalinist-controlled Republican government, the side he was fighting began purging the POUM as traitors. He saw comrades arrested, disappeared. He fled Spain with a death sentence on his head and a cold understanding. He had not merely seen fascism. He had seen a revolution eat its own. That is the molten core from which both books were forged. Animal Farm came first, written in 1943 and 1944 while Britain and the Soviet Union were allies. Orwell, still bearing the scars from Spain, sat down and wrote a fairy story. It was about animals who overthrow their human master and establish a society of equality. The rebellion is led by the pigs, who write 7 commandments on the barn wall. The last of them reads, all animals are equal. It is, on its face, a children's book. It is not a children's book. It is a blade. The allegory is precise, surgical. Old Major, the wise boar who dreams of liberation, is Marx and Lenin in one corpse. Napoleon, the Berkshire boar who takes power, is Stalin, brutal, paranoid, sentimental about nothing. Snowball, the idealist driven out by trained dogs, is Trotsky, exiled and erased from the record. Squealer, the propagandist, is the party press, the beautiful liar who explains why the pigs need the milk and the apples, why Boxer the cart horse must be sold to the glue factory while the pigs drink whiskey with the neighboring farmers. And Boxer, that great loyal fool, is the working class, too honest to see the betrayal, too strong to stop pulling the cart. His maxim, I must work harder is one of the saddest lines ever written. The book was rejected by every major British publisher. T.S. Eliot, working at Faber and Faber, turned it down with a polite note explaining that the political stance was not the right point of view from which to criticize the political situation at the present time. Translation: Stalin is our ally. We cannot say this. Orwell was furious. He considered publishing it at his own expense. Finally, Frederick Warburg, a tiny publisher, took it on. Animal Farm was released in August 1945. The war was over. The Iron Curtain was descending. And the book sold because it was true. But Orwell was not finished. He had a larger book in him, one that had been gestating since Spain, since he had watched language itself become a weapon. He moved to Jura, damp, remote, nearly uninhabited, and began to write. The working title was The Last Man in Europe star. He wrote in bed, between hemorrhages. A nurse was sent to the island. He typed the final pages in November 1948, collapsed, and was carried to a sanatorium. He died in January 1950, 3 months after publication. He was 46. 1984 is not a prediction. It is an autopsy performed on a living body. Winston Smith is a small, ulcerous, defeated man who works at the Ministry of Truth, where his job is to rewrite newspaper archives so that the party's predictions always match the past. A man who was an enemy yesterday is erased today. A crop failure celebrated last month is repurposed as a warning. There is no objective truth. There is only what the party says. And the party, embodied in Big Brother, a face on every telescreen, a name whispered in every dark corner, watches. Always. The unbearable thing is not the surveillance. It is the precision of the psychological destruction. Orwell understood, with a dying man's clarity, that the most effective tyranny does not break your bones. It breaks your ability to think. Newspeak, the party's engineered language, shrinks vocabulary until certain thoughts become unspeakable. If the word does not exist, the concept cannot be formed. Rebellion becomes a linguistic impossibility. And then there is doublethink, the ability to hold two contradictory beliefs and accept both. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. You say the words. You believe them. You also know they are lies. You hold the contradiction without flinching. And when you have mastered doublethink, you have ceased to be a person. The book ends in room 101. Winston is strapped to a chair. A cage is fastened to his face. Inside, a rat. The thing he fears most. O'Brien, his torturer, leans close and explains. The party does not want Winston to obey. It wants him to love Big Brother. It wants his soul dismantled and rebuilt. And it gets it. The final lines, he had won the victory over himself. He loved Big Brother. There is no escape. There is no redemption. There is only the rat. In 2026, both books are everywhere. Star 198 for Star has been trending on TikTok for months, not as a literary curiosity but as a manual. Young people who have never willingly read a classic are holding copies to the camera, eyes wide, saying some version of the same thing, this isn't fiction. Star. In an age of algorithmic curation, the telescreen feels less like metaphor than architecture. In an age of content moderation, the memory hole has a corporate logo. In an age where a phrase can be declared misinformation by the afternoon, Newspeak is a set of content guidelines. But the deeper horror is Animal Farm because Animal Farm is the one we think we have outgrown. We read it at 14, write an essay about Stalin, and move on. Look again. Look at Squealer, who can explain anything. Look at the sheep, the chorus that drowns out debate. Look at the pigs, who begin on 4 legs and end in human clothes, raising toasts with the farmers, indistinguishable from the master they overthrew. The final image, the animals watching through a window. The creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again, but already it was impossible to say which was which. That line has not aged. It has ripened. Here is what Orwell understood, and what we refuse to absorb. Tyranny rarely announces itself. It does not arrive with a boot stamping on a human face forever. It arrives with a pamphlet. An emergency measure. A temporary suspension of a right that will, of course, be restored when the crisis passes. It arrives with a squealer who speaks beautifully of necessity. It arrives with a Big Brother who is not a dictator but a protector, watching out for you. And by the time you notice the cage, it is too late. The rats are already there. The lever is already pulled. Both books emerged from a dying man's lungs, from a bullet wound in Spain, from the ashes of a century that promised utopia and delivered the Gulag. They are not warnings about Stalin. Stalin is dead. They are warnings about us. About the part of every human heart that prefers someone else to do the thinking. About the velocity with which the surrender of freedom for security becomes irreversible. Together they defined dystopian literature, not because they invented the genre, but because they stripped it of fantasy. Orwell showed us that dystopia is not flying cars and ray guns. It is a small room in which a man learns to love the thing destroying him. It is a farm where the animals look through the window and cannot tell the difference between liberator and master. It is now.